Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With you, as always, my friend, Jim Stam. How you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. Hey, I was thinking, the way the NL is set up right now and the division, you know how like teams always do these like why not us shirts? Why not us? We can do what? There's like 4 teams in the NL with a winning record. In the Central, there's only 1 team with the winning record. Can we do something like, why can't we just stink a little less than everybody else, ? And let's do shirts like that. I think that's pretty appropriate.
I love it. Joining us to help answer this question today is my friend Jeff Carr from Locked On Reds. And he's also the channel manager for Locked On Reds, correct? Yes. And we're going to talk through some things. Jeff and I have come to know each other over the years, kind of just crossing over, pitching in, helping out with Ethan at Locked On Pirates, listening to his show, because I like to know my enemies. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I like to know what's going on with the Reds. So I listen to Locked On Reds a lot. That's how I treat a rivalry. I want to know about them. I don't want to just hate them. Right? So
I appreciate that. Yeah, I tried to with Ethan, tried to with you guys as well. And I'm just glad that I'm glad that the Reds and Pirates rivalry has evolved past Yasiel Puig trying to fight everybody and Amir Garrett charging dugouts and things like that. Let's play baseball.
Absolutely. Let's start right there. What was it like? The rivalry felt alive and well for the first time in about half a decade.
I think this was just like a teaser for what it's going to be like for the next couple of years. Like it's going to be pitching duel after pitching duel. I don't necessarily know it's going to be 2-1 every game or 1-0 every game, but these two teams have the kind of pitching staffs that looks like they're going to be here for a while. I mean, between Green, Lodolo, and hopefully Ashcraft can get right, and Abbott's about to pitch in this series opener on Friday against the Red Sox. And then you've got Skeens and Jones, and I mean, the Reds didn't even see Jones. So there's going to be a lot of great pitching matchups between the two teams. And, of course, Mitch Keller as well. Mitch Keller, right. He's got to be sitting there in the corner just like, hey, Paul Skeens is doing pretty well, but, like, don't forget about me here. I'm doing pretty well too.
I can't believe you forgot to mention Bailey Falter. He's like the living
Falter.
He's the greatest lefty pitcher in the entire world all of a sudden.
Killing me. I saw all those advanced metrics and I'm like, come on, hit him. And
it's crazy. Jeff, I wrote a whole piece about what he was doing. And I'm like, he's throwing a fastball and he's reaching closer to the plate before he lets it go. That's it. This dude's the razor's edge. I mean, like, if anything changes with this guy, like if he stubs his toe, it's over. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's fun and interesting. We thought just great time get on to start talking about the Reds and Pirates a little bit. They're very similar teams. We talk about the standings. First question I have for you out of the gate here. Does your fan base freak out as much about being in last place, even though it's percentage points, as ours does?
Let me tell you what. Don't bring positivity to the Cincinnati Reds fan base. Just don't do it, because the moment they hit last place, it's like, all right, so we're firing everybody, right? We're starting over again, right? we're trading everybody, right? Like I don't understand. And no, I do. I take that back. It's been a jaded 30 years. Like basically ever since I've been born. I was 1 year old whenever they won the World Series in 1990. I was 6 years old whenever they advanced in their last playoff appearance. And ever since then, it's just been a whole lot of mediocrity or worse, quite frankly, especially when you look at 2022. So there's a lot of years where everybody can lean back on and just say, look how bad we've been. Why aren't we better now? And with all of the promise that guys like Elliot De La Cruz bring to the team, people are tired of hearing promise. They just want to see results. And when the results are, you go 1-2 in Pittsburgh, you go 1-2 in Milwaukee, then everybody's just like, all right, same old Reds. Here we go again. And
who is the team, Jeff, or who is the player on your team that fans of the Reds hate? because I can like up until a couple weeks ago, Rowdy Tellez was public enemy number one. I think he still is because he doesn't want to run out fly balls that he thinks are homers, and he can't win for trying. But so who is that guy on the Reds this year?
Ooh, that's a tough one because there's a very divided camp on Elly De La Cruz. There are the people that will tell you about his on-base numbers. They'll tell you about his stolen base numbers. They'll tell you about his power numbers. They'll tell you about the awesome stuff that he does. I'm in that camp. There's also people that will talk about his strikeouts and the fact that he has a lower than normal batting average and the fact that he's very inconsistent and point to his errors and things like that. And those are the people that try to shout you down whenever you talk about how good he is. But Hunter Green can't give up a run, because if he gives up a run, there is a large group of Reds fans that just want to absolutely hammer him, and it makes no sense to me whatsoever.
That's shocking. Okay,
it makes
sense. I never would have known that for real.
Where does that come from?
From afar, I'm jealous of Hunter Green.
And I love watching him pitch. I love watching him work, and he's starting to work the splitter in there, but like, there have been a couple of narratives that have been built around him about, pitch efficiency and the fact that he doesn't really have a reliable third pitch. And until he develops both of those things on a consistent basis to where he does it every single day, people want to say that he's a closer and they want to say that he is a bust. And I'm like, maybe give him a minute. I don't know. He's still pretty young, and there's a number of games that he hasn't played at the minor league level that it's surprising when you see the fact that he's already thrown more innings at the major league level than he ever did in the minor leagues. And he was picked out of high school, but it was just because of injury and COVID that it kind of messed with his overall development in the minor leagues.
Well, what was your perception of the Pirates before this series and after, if it changed at all?
So I don't remember, and Jim, I don't know if you know this or not, but this was something that I told Ethan last year, and I stood on the table when I did it. I took the Pirates to hit the over last year on their win total, and I was happy that they did. But I see the vision for the team as long as they can kind of keep everybody together. I see the vision for the pitching staff, but also for the lineup as well. And I mean, when it comes to guys like O'Neal Cruz, as long as they're healthy, this team is going to be so much fun. Because without O'Neal Cruz, it feels like the lineup or the infield specifically has to move around in a way that it doesn't like. Like, I get that Jared Triolo does have some positional flexibility, but you would much rather him at different positions than shortstop. And I love what O'Neal Cruz brings to the table. I got him on my Keeper League fantasy team. So I love what the Pirates have going on. And as much as Cardinal fans or Cubs fans, or even Reds fans for that matter, see the Pirates on the schedule and think of it from like 2 or 3 years ago when it felt like the Pirates were a get-right team, I'm like, guys, your brain must have stopped in 2021 or something like that, because this team is a lot better than they have been, and they're only on an upward trajectory from here.
I mean, Jim, I would say his classification of Elly De La Cruz is exactly what we have for O'Neal Cruz, right? Mm-hmm. Almost everyone says everything he said to us verbatim, right? So the comparisons are very real for those two players. How did you feel that kind of played out in this series?
I definitely saw it. I kind of wanted to see a little bit more from O'Neal Cruz, but he did have a couple of clutch RBI hits and things like that. I was waiting for a missile that just went into the Allegheny. I think that's the river. It went into the river there, and I didn't quite see that, but I'm sure we're going to see that plenty of times. The thing that I wanted the most, and I was glad that we got it, was that Elly was on second base and we got a picture of the two of them together. Like, I kind of want it like it's like a school picture, like first day of school type vibes when it comes to O'Neal Cruz and Elly De La Cruz, because that was the first series that both of them have been in the major leagues and both of them have been healthy at the same time. So
what those kind of remind me of is the Cruz thing is like the old baseball cards, right? Where you would have like first base sluggers, and it would be, McGuire and Will Clark or whatever. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I was actually just really looking forward to seeing them on the same field. I tell you, I would feel a little bit more comfortable with Elly just simply because he's younger. Like O'Neal Cruz is not young anymore. As far as like blowing up standards. He's going to be 26, I think, at the end of this year, and I think Ellie's still 22 or 23. Yeah. Those are big years for the development thing. So I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with Ellie at this point. But the reality is, guys, with both these guys is they're athletes that are still, I think, trying to figure out baseball. Some, yes. They're special athletes, and it doesn't surprise me that there's been more ups and downs with them than, say, maybe your typical guy that comes up that's a high draft pick.
Right.
They're just different.
We got to take a quick break here, and we come back. Let's talk a little bit about the division overall, because we think we finally both seen them all. I mean, who thought that would happen late in June?
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Love this comment. Got to throw it up there. Jason Spinelli says, can we sign this guy up to be a Pirates fan? More positivity than he's heard all year. I totally agree. And it's always like that from afar. I think a lot of Pirates fans have been envious of the Reds, especially the offensive players that have come up over the last couple years. And Jeff, that's probably my biggest shock from looking at the Reds from afar. Where's the hitting? You guys were absolutely killing it last year. We have our own hitting coach thing going on here where everyone's screaming and yelling. I have hated David Bell from afar for a long time, so I hope he's catching heat. But what do you think, man?
Definitely is. He definitely is, and it's annoying that he got himself a contract extension this past offseason, so there's like the semantics of it all that if they were to fire him this year, it would be like, hey, contract extensions don't matter. So that's probably not going to happen. But he had some weird things to say after the Milwaukee series as well, saying that, he didn't know that the Reds had lost 8 straight series to the Brewers. And they weren't talking about that in the locker room. It's just like, what are you talking about? But no, I think to the listener's point, or to the viewer's point, when we watch our teams day in and day out, it's kind of like when you're trying to clean your house or something. Like, you've seen it so much, you've looked at it so much, you've seen that mess so much that you really can't tell that it's clean. And then whenever you get somebody else to take a look at it, they're like, dude, that's like the best it's ever looked, or it's really looking up, or things are really looking good for you all. Like, that's where you get that perspective in from everyone else. The hitting has just been frustrating because when they're getting on base, they're not getting over and getting in. And on the days that they're not getting on base, you can watch them. They're super aggressive. Like, I think they looked at the numbers that I looked at whenever it came to Bailey Falter and Mitch Keller, where they don't walk guys. So, okay, we're going to get up there and we're going to be aggressive. So then you had really short at bats to the point that, honestly, I was surprised that Shelton went and got Keller when he did in that game. I thought Keller probably could have flirted with a complete game in that performance. But even with Bailey Falter, I mean, the 2-run bomb notwithstanding, he pitched amazing. And I specifically think of the one at bat that he had with Ellie De La Cruz, where he threw 2 fastballs. And the first fastball, Ellie smashed it, but it was foul. But it was a home run if he straightened out. That whole thing. You straighten that out, it's gone. And then he drops the slider in there just perfectly that he swings over top of by like a foot. And you're like, that was brilliant pitching. Like, these guys have been pitching so well because this lineup can get very aggressive against guys that don't walk people. And then against guys that walk people, they have super long at bats and they really force them to throw pitches. And so you watch those games and you're just like, well, why can't they do that on a more consistent basis? Make that your brand. Make that your consistent thing that you do. But they do all this advanced scouting. They do all these advanced metrics that they try to change almost on a pitcher-by-pitcher basis, which I think is necessary sometimes. But sometimes I think you adjust against yourself and then you're playing against yourself. And that's really what's brought them down to the point that they are not a consistent threat against any given pitcher. I mean...
So, Jeff, let me ask you this. Would it be fair to say that just trying to glean some things from your comments. Would it be fair to say that maybe the Reds have fallen in love with the stolen base a little too much? Is that part of it? That seems to be their main goal, which is get on and then we'll steal bases, but that doesn't work if you're not getting on and you're hitting against pitchers that simply aren't walking guys, which the Pirates right now seem to have a lot of that in their starting rotation.
I think that is the perfect way to encapsulate that, Jim, because the perfect example of that was Stuart Fairchild getting the walk there in the 8th inning yesterday, top of the 8th inning, in the final game of the Reds-Pirates series. And then he got the second because he stole on a pitch that was outside that Grandal got to and still made a throw, but it was too late. But that was already with 2 outs, and so he's on second base, and then they don't get him over and get him in because they weren't focused on that. They were waiting for him to get the steal, and then they were going to start. It's so weird because part of me kind of wants them to do that with Ellie, but they really shouldn't be thinking about that with any other player on base because Ellie's got that ability to get the steal on almost any pitcher and almost any catcher out there. I mean, Patrick Bailey might be the one guy I'm a little worried about, but other than that, like pretty much everybody, I think he's got a leg up on. But that does seem to hamstring the offense in the long run.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
because as Pirate fans, we look at it and we're like, we want to run more. Like we're not doing it enough. Like we want to take advantage of that a little bit. So yeah, that's just funny because like outwardly, I want more of that, but maybe it can go too far too. So.
I mean, well, we want Rowdy to run from the beginning. That's all. We're still losing our minds about that one because I'll be honest, I'm not sure that was a triple one way or another for him.
He would have had to have been busting out of the box, right? Like,
yeah.
I maybe would have liked to have seen it.
He's super lucky he made it to second. Let's just leave it there.
God.
I would say.
Let me ask you about that because I had a thought on that one play. Everything that happened in that one play, I felt like that encapsulated the Reds-Pirates rivalry for like the last decade, right? Like one team does something really good and then figures out a way to make that really good, really bad. But then the other team, even though the other team did something really bad, they do something worse to make sure that really bad isn't as bad as it should have been.
Right. They always do stuff like that. Like, even if it came down to like hitting each other, like with the pitchers throwing at each other, there was never a stop because neither one wanted to be last, and nobody remembered who was first. We're still yelling about Brandon Phillips calling Jared Hughes racist or something like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. People are still talking about that.
Just because there's been some rivalry in there doesn't mean it has to be quality rivalry. It's just conflict.
Well, so now that we've played everybody, and I mean, we talked about how late it is in the year. It's weird. I think it's weird to get this late into a season and not have been fully entrenched in division games so far. There's things I like about this new schedule. There's things I'm not 100% on board with, and one of them is not playing my division until a couple weeks before the All-Star break. That's a little strange to me. That said, we've done it now. Are the Brewers really this much better than the rest of the National League Central? I don't feel like they are. They didn't scare me. Their numbers don't scare me. I'm not sure I understand how they're so much better right now.
I'm glad you said that. Because I feel like I'm sitting over here in the corner that's just like butthurt about the Brewers, I think. And I conceded that last year as well whenever they won. But they don't have Corbin Burns anymore. Brandon Woodruff is hurt and he ain't coming back. Devin Williams is hurt and maybe he's coming back soon. But they haven't had a closer. They've used 28 different pitchers already this season. And the guys that are leading their lineup shouldn't be. Like, as much as William Contreras can hit with power, I never expected him to hit 300. And Bryce Terang is a glove-first middle infielder that why on earth he's doing as well as he is, I have no idea.
Hitting 280.
Yeah, and the Reds have lost both series that they played against the Brewers this year, so it's not like I'm coming from a perspective that is warranting this, but I just don't buy the Brewers. Like, I think at some point if they get a good offer for Willie Adames, they're going to take it. And if they get a good offer for Devin Williams, they're going to take it because they got Jackson Chourio, they got Self Frelick up in the majors. They've got these young guys that they can kind of start their next era with, and those guys don't seem like they're going to be around for much longer. I don't know. Like
that said, if you're up, 7.5 games come deadline time, I don't think you're selling anything, right? I think you're going out and buying stuff. So if anything, they might derail their own plans this year, Jim.
That's when we have to get a Brewers guy on here, because I can't imagine what that would look and sound like. Because try selling that to a fan base again.
Hey, they sold Hader in the heat of a pennant race.
They did.
Yep.
So and you know what? True. Can you say they were wrong?
It worked out.
No.
For
yeah, I can't.
And by the way, I just saw Devin Williams is just now starting to throw off the mound. So they will be getting better in that regard if he's the guy we know that he has been. So I don't know how they're doing it.
Consensus would be that the three of us sitting here on this virtual room think that the Brewers are going to come back a little bit to the pack, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, just looking at things. The Cardinals are in second place, not by much, but they're in second place. I called this the Cardinals would be the last place team at the beginning of the season. I still feel the Cardinals are the last place team. And the fact, we're going to do a little bit of a draft amongst the NL Central here later to kind of see how we could fix our own teams with just kind of plucking from our own backyards. Jim and I cheated a little bit and talked before. We both had a hard time coming up with any Cardinals we wanted.
Yeah.
I can't see that sustaining itself.
No, so I think their biggest thing that they've had is that Mason Wynn has had a pretty nice start to his major league career, but a pretty nice start is he's good at hitting singles and walking. And those are things that I think those kind of right themselves as well when guys learn how to pitch him. So
he's very much so a shortstop in the mold of Ozzie Smith, and I'm not sure that plays in today's game. So it's a little bit weird, right?
It's funny. You look at, we just talked about the Brewers and how are they doing 14 games over 500? I take a look at the Cardinals roster right now, and I'm like, how are they 500 or a game under? I don't see that either. So there are some odd things happening within the division. The Cubs have ran into a little bit of a bad stretch here too. So, I don't know what to make of it. I think out of the teams that I do think the Pirates are in a good position right now to at least, and maybe even the Reds, because I think both teams could be hitting a little better than they are. I really do.
Again, I can't see how the Reds aren't. Even you, it has to be the bane of your existence every time somebody brings up Jonathan India. Here's a dude that just a couple years ago, Rookie of the Year. What happened to him? So you have to be blaming your hitting coach, right? You have to be blaming your hitting coach.
It's partially that, but also his power's just gone. He's slugging a little bit here and there, but it's definitely not on a consistent basis. And he's got such great plate discipline, but it almost feels as though he focused on that too much. As if it's more important to take a bunch of pitches than it is to find the one pitch that you need to hit and get.
Boy, does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
It's kind of fun to watch sometimes whenever you really need to run up a pitch count on a guy. He did that to Keller the other day. But at the same time, sometimes you see a good pitch cross the plate and you're like, yeah, you maybe should have went for that one. But
when we get the bases loaded, I feel it's more likely that batter is going to walk the run in than anyone's going to hit that run in when I'm watching the Pirates. Is that kind of what you're saying with the Reds? They're that kind of crazy patience, or just India?
Just India.
Okay.
Actually, there's a couple of guys that to a fault that I'm I think you're too aggressive, but for the most part, it's gotta be a game where they're just facing a guy that's nibbling and not hitting the strike zone, where they all show that kind of patience. But definitely with India, I think the other problem is that Will Benson has become very, very streaky, where it's for 1 week, maybe 10 days, he's going to be on fire and impossible to pitch to. And then for 2 weeks to 3 weeks, he's an automatic out. And especially with his strikeout rate, that's just not been enough for a Reds team that's missed TJ Friedl for large chunks of the season. And who knows, he might hit the injured list again. I mean, that catch that he had in the first game was absolutely amazing. But you could see it at the end of him like sliding along the center field grass there at PNC. Something wasn't right. And then he gets up and he's grabbing his inner thigh. And I'm like, oh my, did he pull something? What's going on here? And
so you got any help coming? You got Ashcroft coming back, right? And he could be a decent pitcher. You got Marte coming back off steroid suspension. I would imagine that's something that you're welcoming and hoping for. Anything else that you expect this year?
And is there anything like that you're hoping or hearing about the Reds at the deadline? Like, do you expect them to do anything, or, because we're having this debate here with what are the Pirates going to be doing here, in the next 2 to 4 weeks or 5 weeks, whatever. Like on your side, what does that look like?
The good news is Nick Krall is talking about being a buyer and talking about, and in fact, before the Reds went on a 7-game win streak, he said, we need to go on a streak and then we're going to be right where we need to be to make a move and make a run. And I think that they've got to be looking. And I've seen some people writing about Luis Robert. I don't even want Nick Krall to call Chris Getz. I want him to block his number because of the things he was talking about he wanted for Dylan Cease. I'm like, if he wanted that for Dylan Cease, he's going to want more for Luis Robert, and that would just be the entire Reds farm system. So I think that there's a guy that I'm looking at, and I'm going to stand on the table until they hopefully do it, and that's Brent Rooker from Oakland. I think that you could go get Brent Rooker for a prospect package that isn't like something that would kill your farm system, and that would help shore up a big need that they've had since the offseason began, really. I mean, they needed a right-handed power bat in the outfield, whether that was a platoon guy like an Adam Duvall, or if it was an everyday guy, Teoscar Hernandez was out there, which, of course, when the Dodgers come calling, you answer. So I get that. But it was just like, get a right-handed power bat in the outfield, because then you can kind of move some things around. Spencer Steer can play first base a little bit more, and you not feel you don't have to play like a Jacob Hurtubise in the outfield or something like that, which his story is all fun and good and stuff, but he's not been that productive. The outfield has just been a huge question mark, especially with TJ Friedl being hurt. But the one guy who I'm kind of cautiously optimistic on, because they keep saying optimistic things, is Matt McClain. They say that Matt McClain is going to begin a rehab outing in August. He had labrum surgery in March. So I'm like, that seems really optimistic. I don't know if I buy it, but if you're saying it, maybe it's true. This team has also been super optimistic on injuries before, so I'm not necessarily sure that we can.
We heard a lot of this with O'Neal Cruz last year, where maybe August, maybe September, right, Jim? And then, eventually they pull the rug out from under you, depending on where the team is. I would say if you're charging towards the playoffs and he's maybe going to be able to, you might see them try. But I hear you.
It's tough to count on him, but definitely Noelvi Marte will be a huge boon. And as much as I didn't like his answers as to how this all happened, he will be welcome back on the lineup with open arms. Especially, 16-game hitting streak is how he ended last year, so he'll technically be coming in with an active hitting streak going. So that's going to be a lot of fun too.
Here's a question from Dayon here. He says, serious question for you guys. Why do so many Pirates fans presume that any criticism of the team management is some kind of attack on the franchise itself? And yes, I know what he means, and it does drive me nuts too. I agree. I feel like you can't praise anybody or ask even a question. Today I put out a tweet on Twitter, and Jeff, I'd love to hear if you have this experience too. Put out a tweet on there about Nick Gonzalez having a bit of a downturn. That's a quote. You would not believe the replies underneath it, talking about how can you question him? He's been so great. He just faced Lodolo and Green. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, the last 15 games is a little bit of a downturn. That's all I'm saying. Let's not panic. Let's push through it, right? Dayon's dead right. You can't say anything like that. You can't say anything like that.
I love just posting like a stat and pulling the pin and walking away. Because I just love to see what the reaction is to that, because I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just posting something, and then it takes on its own like life narrative underneath, and like even people will be like, "Yeah, man, I hear what you're saying." I'm like, I haven't said anything. I just posted a stat.
Right.
And like, it's just funny how that goes. But man, by the end of the thread, you'd think I said that. Let's use Nick Gonzalez, that he was garbage. But that never happened. So
I mean, like you said, one home run is enough to have them turn on Hunter Green. So I'm sure you're experiencing this too with your own comments, right?
It's there's some certain things that you say, and there are certain groups of people that immediately jump on it. Like I remember we did a podcast, Steve and I did, about how we are really concerned about a couple of different things, and this was back when the Reds were going 5-17 in a 22 game stretch, and it was like, at this point, if you're saying positive things, you're slightly delusional, maybe had something good to drink. And there were people in the comments that were just like, "Oh my gosh, you guys turned on the Reds? See, we knew we were the biggest Reds fans around." And it was just like, huh? When did we say anything like that? And the other thing in this one, there's a couple of things that you can immediately say, and you will immediately anger a bunch of people. And most of it has to do with Joey Votto. My favorite thing right now is that there were comments, and Nick Kroll said this, a direct quote. He said, "We do not have at-bats for Joey Votto this year." This is whenever they declined his option back in December. And it's like, well, karma said hold my beer on that one, because sure seems like he could have gotten some at-bats on this team this year. And if you ever suggest that on Twitter, you will be shouted down by a whole bunch of people. And it's so funny because you're right. Like, I feel like there are some people that take their sports fandom as almost a political affront to their livelihood.
Totally.
If you say something they disagree with, they're just like, "No, what? You're blocked, or I'm gonna try and cancel you." And it's just like, dude, I just said they strike out too much. Like,
there's actually far too many parallels with the mindset between sports and politics. It's actually frightening at times.
They really are. I'll tell you what, let's take another quick break and let's come back. Let's have some fun. Let's make our teams better by robber bearing the rest of the NL Central.
Let's steal some players.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I should have had a little theme song for our draft, Jim, but I didn't. I took the easy way out.
Yeah,
the goal here,
done like a little jingle when it's your time to pick or something like the NFL draft.
Absolutely. Instead, we're just going to have to try to keep it in my head as best we can. But I figured neither of these teams is more than 4 decent players away from making a good push, I'd say. That's fair, at least. You can say 4 decent players. I think we can probably all find 4 decent players within the NL Central to make our team better. And the reason I want to do this is a couple things. First, I want us to expose our weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So we'll basically tell everybody what we think is weakest about our team as we go through this process, right? And the second reason I wanted to do it is to kind of show how slim the pickings really are in the NL Central. Because by the time we're done with 12 teams, I think we'd have, or 12 guys, I think we'd have a real hard time coming up with any more. I really do. It's actually not that good. In fact, I'll hit you both with a stat here before we get started. There's only 2 players in the NL Central, qualified players, I'm saying, like have enough at bats to actually be up for any awards, right? Who have an OPS over 800. 2.
It's rough.
William Contreras and Michael Busch.
Wow, you should have made us guess. Yeah, because I
It's
could have
crazy,
guessed
right?
one. The other one, we would have had we could have gone 3 hours at it. I probably would have not guessed that.
Wouldn't guess Michael.
All I'm
Walsh.
saying is like we've kind of universally accept 800 as an acceptable good number for hitters, right? The league average right now, I think, is at 703. I didn't check it today, but it was just 703 a couple days ago. That's an all-time low. Last year, I think it finished at 734, which, that's about the league average for that. Well, that means to be more better than average, you just got to have like 736, right? So 800 is pretty good. And we just don't have anybody in the NL Central that is hitting that number. That should just tell you, like, when you look through the Pirates order that gets posted every day and you go, how can they hit? How can they hit? How can they have this guy? How can they still be running that guy out there? I looked at the Reds stats. I think you have one guy hitting over 250.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Average
like,
is not a good number for any Reds hitter. That's for sure.
Baseball has changed, and it's probably changed a lot more than most of us would like. But I'm just saying, like, every once in a while, look outside your bubble like we're doing on this episode today and really look around at what's there. And let's start the draft. Let's be nice, host, Jim, and let our guests go first.
Okay.
I would like us to not repeat names. So if you take somebody, I won't take them, I promise. But
so just
Or
reiterate
from
we'll
can
go
pick
one.
a pirate, you can pick a red.
You can pick a pirate, we can pick a red. Jim and I will try not to repeat too. But
yeah, and four guys all from the NL Central. So
yep. Have at it. You get the first round. The 1-1.
First
unlike
round.
last year when you guys got knocked down to 9 and we got Paul Skeens. Sorry.
No, we're not sorry at all. Not at all.
That was not me sounding like a pirate for
especially since he's the guy you're going to take probably. But,
boy, I would certainly like to and shore up the rotation, but I am just so locked in on the outfield right now. I want Cody Bellinger.
You son of a gun.
I wanted him last off season, and I knew the Reds weren't in the bidding. They weren't going to go for him. But I'm like, dude, if you could give me somebody that, like, logic be darned as far as like explaining why the Reds should go after him, go get him. But there's a need. There's a need on the team for a guy like Cody Bellinger.
Right.
The logic part of it was how much money he's going to cost, how many years he wants, all that other stuff. I knew that the Reds weren't going to go for that sort of thing. But give me Cody Bellinger when we're rating players right now.
All right, 1-1 for the Reds is Cody Bellinger. I think that fixes a lot of things right away. But Jim, you're up. You get your first now.
Let me just say this about Bellinger. First of all, for the Pirates, you're talking center field and first base. Mm-hmm. And if you are on,
don't get more perfect than that.
I mean, my God. And then he's lefty, which, God, we need someone that can put the ball out of the park from the left-handed side.
And he doesn't have splits. He's not a platoon split worry for you.
And then, he's a carry an offense for a month type guy when he gets hot. The right field in PNC Park is just made for him. So, yeah. And he's not been great this year. I mean, he's not been fantastic, but he was probably my number one guy. I can see why. Gary, did you have him too?
He's on my list. Okay. I have a backup. Don't worry. Go ahead.
All right. I'll go with someone who I think is also pretty obvious is Contreras from the Brewers. The catching situation in Pittsburgh has, how can I put this, stunk. And Henry Davis is looking very iffy at best right now. We're just not getting anything out of that position. He is by far and away, I think, the best catcher in the NL right now and in all of baseball. His numbers across the board are fantastic.
He's probably one of the top 5 hitters in the NL right now. So
right. Yeah. So like if you look at overall, I think he's hitting 302. He's got a little pop. He's driving in runs, 44 RBIs. FWAR 2.5, WRC plus is 147. Mm-hmm. Like he's doing things, and also he doesn't miss games. Right. He's in there every night. So
As a
he's
DH or catcher, yeah, you're right.
yeah. So
Yeah, William
it's hard to
Contreras,
beat him.
pretty easy consensus. You're right.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
going to do something crazy because the Pirates don't need this guy at all. But I want to fortify my team. I want to go insane. I'm taking Imanaga.
Hmm.
I'm taking Imanaga and adding him into this rotation of Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, Mitch Keller, Bailey Falter until he explodes, and and
Bailey
The time
Falter's like
bomb.
Bailey Falter's like the Titan submersible. We are using him. We don't feel safe about it, but we keep going down and being able to get good results. But
it sure is
eventually,
fun, and dumb rich people keep paying. So
but eventually, we feel like this ride will end in disaster and implode. It just hasn't happened. Is that too soon for any of this?
The door's been bolted shut, and we don't know why.
I
but
don't know,
here we
Jim. That's
go.
really up to you. All I know
Too
is it
soon?
circles. All I know is it circles us back around to Jeff.
Titan submersible. I like that for Bailey Falter. I think my next one I gotta go for. Boy, this is a tough one because there's a little bit of hope on the side of guys coming back from injury and things like that. But if I don't have to worry about that, then I'd be pretty happy with that. So give me. Maybe I just like the Cubs too much. Give me Nico Horner. I would love Nico Horner at second base. I think he's got a great glove, and I think he's got an underrated bat. I don't think he's hitting as well as he did last year, but I definitely think you put him at second base, and you kind of fix a lot of different things. Jonathan India coming into this season was not supposed to be the everyday second baseman. They were talking about playing him in left field. They were talking about playing him at first base because they're like, yeah, we want to get his bat in the lineup, but we're not necessarily sure that his glove is all that important. So wherever we can stick him, we'll stick him. But then Matt McClain got hurt, and you needed somebody at second base, and Jonathan India's done that before, so we put him there. I think if you go get Nico Horner, then you've got one heck of a middle of the infield type defense with him and Ellie. And then you can also use India in the outfield or as needed in different spots, and he becomes that super utility player that we had sort of bandied about him being in the offseason. So yeah, I think my second pick would be Nico Horner.
That's a surprising pick. I love it. First, because you didn't pick any of mine, and second, I would just like to just note here before we go to Jim's second pick. That's 4 picks in, and we've already taken 3 people from the Cubs who are in second to last place.
Right.
So that should just show you how crazy this division really is. And Jim, it's time for your second pick.
Yeah, well, now I've got Jeff distracted a little bit, so I'm sneaking in the back door on the Reds, and I'm taking Lodolo, baby. You don't get him anymore because I fell in love with him in his last start, and I might have been sleeping on him a little bit. And I like
health's always been his problem, really, right?
Yeah. So, but I just it's obviously, regardless of what Falter's doing, he's an upgrade in general to a rotation, obviously. But like, if I could upgrade a Falter into a Lodolo, yeah, I would do it. I like how he pitches. I like how he attacks guys. So yeah, that's my guy I'm taking. I'm sorry, buddy.
No, I put up like a GIF yesterday of like Godzilla and King Kong fighting for Keller and Green, and I could have done the same thing for Lodolo. I mean, like it was insane watching him go and just do his job. I mean, he's really turned into a pitcher really quickly. It didn't take long. Like last year, I felt like he was trying to place everything. This year, he looks like in command. Came along real quick.
The surprise to me is the changeup, because honestly, all Reds fans wanted him to be this year was healthy, and his changeup has turned into a weapon. Where the last couple of years, it's just been fastball, breaking ball. That's what he had, and you loved how he used the breaking ball, so you weren't that worried about another pitch. But the fact that he has that changeup that can back up and he can tunnel it with the curveball or slider, whatever it is. I've seen people say both with the breaking ball, which makes it funny. Maybe you just call it a slurve. But
He can call it a splinker if he wants to.
Splinker, slurve. Let's just make ghost fork. What was that? That was the goat.
Just make it up as we go, right?
Yeah, like crazy words. But I that's been the biggest surprise to me is that he's added the changeup on top of the fact that he's healthy.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take with my second pick, hometown hero, perpetual pirate killer, Swiss Army knife, switch hitter, Ian Happ, because I know it's another Cub, but
Yeah,
I've wanted Ian Happ for a long time, so I wasn't going to pass up my opportunity to go ahead and say that I wanted him. I think Ian Happ could slide in and kind of do whatever they need him to do. I don't care. I don't care if it's
really
first base, outfield, whatever. He'll find a way to contribute. DH, anything that they need out of him, I think they'll get.
And it keeps he's a pirate killer because he's a Reds killer too.
Maybe he just kills the division.
Yeah, it just subtracting him from the Cubs would be great.
Yes.
Just even if he didn't go to the Pirates, simply because of what he's done to Gary. That's a really good one. I don't know why I didn't go the Ian Happ route because he's a Pittsburgh boy too. So.
I mean, obviously, I'm showing too that I only care about this year. So because I wouldn't be picking older guys for, if I was trying to forecast this out for a couple of years. But all right, so Jeff, so far you have Cody Bellinger and Nico Horner. Who is your next third pick?
So I'm not going to pick a Cub this time, I promise.
All right,
but I am going to steal a Pirate. I want Brian Reynolds. I'm tired of him hitting against the Reds. I really love Brian Reynolds, watching him play, especially against the Reds. He kills the Reds. But I feel like he does everything well. And it's not as if he has to be an MVP in any one category, but he's just so good at every aspect of baseball. And then if I add him with Cody Bellinger, then I don't necessarily have to play a platoon spot in my outfield. I can have the other spot be Spencer Steer, and then my outfield is Bellinger, Reynolds, and Steer, and I feel a lot better about that. And then
that sounds scary, actually.
Yeah.
Does it surprise you, Jeff, that here in Pittsburgh that Brian Reynolds kind of takes a beating a little bit? Yeah,
man. When honestly, when he hit that home run in the third game, I was like, that figures. Don't throw him a strike. Like
we get a lot of complaints about him being overpaid, which is unbelievable for this market, right?
That's and if you'd ask me last year, what do people hate the most about the Reds? They hate the fact that Joey Votto was making so much money. Like I'm like, guys, there's no salary cap. Who cares how much they're making? It's all about what ownership will pay, and if ownership will pay it, then that's the end of that conversation. He's not hamstringing any budget because there isn't a budget.
Which brings me that brings me to a question. See, because here what ends up happening is as soon as the Pirates pay anybody, they are seen as they now must be
perfect,
almost like superstar league leader type guys.
Yeah.
Do the Reds fans pay attention to like Mitch Keller? People lost their minds that they gave Mitch Keller that deal. And Gary and I have been trying to hammer home the point that, like, listen, it's the going rate for that type of guy before this season started, and he might even be a bargain, but people see $15 million a year, which is nothing for a starter, and they think here that means he has to get Cy Young votes. Do people in Cincinnati or with the Reds feel like as soon as the guy's making any kind of money, they're not paying attention to what that means league-wide? It's just they're now expected to do more even if they're not capable of it.
It's funny you say that because I had mentioned that, people tend to be really harsh on Hunter Green, and I don't know why. And I think that's why, is because he's the first of this young group of Reds that got a contract extension. And because he's making more, and you're right, it's like $15 million is nothing, especially when you consider the fact, I think the qualifying offer last year was like 19.5. So that's kind of like in football, you translate it to the franchise tag. Like if you're making less than the qualifying offer is, you would think that's a bargain, especially for a starting pitcher where, like, I'm sure if Mitch Keller were to hit the open market in a couple of years, he'd be making easily more than $15 million.
I mean, Jeff, he's a pitcher that has, I think it's 46 straight outings of 5 innings or more. That doesn't happen.
That's
That
20
doesn't
million at minimum. Like
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
25 million. Like
It's really insane. But
yeah.
it's your turn to pick, Jim. I know
Oh,
you were trying to delay it so that you could think a little bit longer.
No, but that really made me think. Like, do people just not pay attention to what's going on when you talk about outside the bubble? Are people paying attention to what guys cost league wide? They sure don't here. Okay, I'm gonna go. See, I tried to do this a little differently, guys. I picked 4 guys, but I made myself take one from each team.
Jim always has to make things harder. So
because it was easy. Well, hell,
So
it
we're
would
gonna
have
have
turned
a
in.
Cardinal?
It would have turned it into an all Cubs show if I didn't. So I had to.
It's crazy though because
thank God.
the Cubs aren't good.
So
Yeah.
all 3 of us can agree we have no idea why they aren't good.
Absolutely not. On paper, they look like they should kill everybody.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Agreed.
The Cubs. We took all the Cubs. I have no idea how the Cardinals have a 1 game under 500, and I have no idea how the Brewers are 14 over. So clearly, I know nothing. Okay, I went off the Cardinals, and this was tough because I'm like, God, I look at their roster, and I'm like, and I'm trying to help the Pirates out. I went with Ryan Helsley out of the pen because like he's been so good this year. He's been consistently good in other seasons. If I want to lengthen my bullpen and get a guy and add that to Holderman, Bednar, Aroldis Chapman when he's throwing strikes, Helsley would be a guy that I would add and that I think he would fit right in. So that's how I ended up with him.
That's a good call. Especially if you're trying to actually win games instead of just collect baseball cards like I am, apparently. But with my Ian Happ pick.
It wasn't exciting, but but there was it was slim pickings on them.
No, I like that pick. That kind of depth could really change things in the bullpen as far as what these starters hand things off to. So, Jeff, we're back to you. Your last selection.
No,
Gary.
I have to go. Oh.
Yeah.
I'm going Jeimer Candelario.
Okay.
Much like Ian Happ, could fill just about any role that I need him to fill out. Hits. Really just hits. That's all I want. Just a guy that hits. I don't really care if he hits home runs. I don't care if he hits singles. I just want somebody that hits. And I think he does that. So that's a guy I wanted them to sign in the offseason. Yeah. Reds beat us to the punch. We still have a hole at first base. He can fill it. That's what I would do.
It's funny because his April was horrible. And so there were a bunch of people that were just like, I don't know that Mike Moustakas was a better signing than Jeimer Candelario was. And it was just like, guys, give him more than a month to play. And then he proved everybody wrong in the months of May and June because he's just been on fire ever since the weather got hot. So I've been happy to see that. I've been really happy with him because he has the perfect kind of hitting profile that you want in this game, in this version of baseball, where he's just a line drive guy. Like, he's not trying to hit home runs. When he does, it's because he just hit the ball really well. And I think that, his pinch hit at bat, because he sort of like was grabbing at his hamstring in the second game, and so he didn't start in the third game, but they brought him in off the bench in that weird like little chess match of, well, if Mitch Keller was staying in the ball game, then we would have kept our guy in. But since you went to the bullpen and got Holderman, we're going to bring in Candelario. And it's just like, all right, whatever.
Those two titans of industry, David Bell and Derek Shelton, just hammering it out in a brain contest in the middle of a series in which 6 runs took 2 victories.
I mean, fly on the wall for that conversation between those two guys. Yeah, I'm sure.
All right, man. 4th pick for you.
4th pick. You mentioned a guy that you wish that the Pirates had signed. I'm going to pick a guy that I wish the Reds had signed. And reports were, and I had heard that it was down to the Reds and the Cardinals. I want Sonny Gray. I know that I've really hammered the outfield, and I brought in Nico Horner for second base. So I feel like my lineup's good. I want to shore up the pitching staff and make sure that all 5 spots look good. Sonny Gray was a guy that they were looking at before they lost him to St. Louis, and I really feel like he has had a bit of a resurgence. He's gonna be a guy that has injury issues. I remember he had that whenever he was a Red, where he had some sort of, it was like a tweaked back or some sort of muscle thing in his back, and all reports indicated that once he gets better, and this was back when it happened, once he gets better, it's something he's going to have to deal with for the rest of his career. And we're like, really? That's not something you want to hear.
Right,
but he still looks
right.
like he's pitching pretty well, and I would definitely take him in my rotation right now.
That makes total sense. And if we're going to be picking from the Cardinals, he's got to be on your list, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Jim,
So
you got one more pick.
Jeff, is it personal with Skeens that I haven't heard his name? I'm just shocked,
No,
right? Like,
I think I want to give him a little bit more time, but no, I love what I saw. I mean, that pickoff move that he got Ellie with is the best that Ellie has seen all year. And then, of course, the way that he was able to change up. Like, I know in the first inning, the Reds were hitting the fastball. And so he's just like, all right, I'll just throw you the splitter that's better than the fastball anyway. Which
Jeff
I kind of
just doesn't want to have to try to stamp down his innings the rest of the season just to get him into the playoffs, right?
That's the one thing, because they're already doing that. They're going to have to do that with Lodolo. I don't know how they're going to do that.
We have to do it with Skeens and Jones and, even our backups like Ashcraft that are on their way up. We have to be careful.
Yeah,
with, so
I'm looking for the day we have Ashcraft against Ashcraft. That's going to be interesting to watch.
Should be fun.
Cruz and Ashcraft. Yeah, I'm shocked. I was like, I think I did. Jeff just might have gotten fired from his pretend GM position here by not taking Skeens. But anyways, so we mentioned this guy already. So this is my last guy. I would add Devin Williams. I know he hasn't pitched all year. That guy, his changeup is no one can hit him. His changeup is unhittable. Assuming now I think it's stress fractures in his back. So this isn't just anything, muscle related. At least it's not arm, but it is a back. That guy is so stinking good. I'd have to add him. I'd have to.
How could you not? That's a nice pickup. Your bullpen has certainly gotten better, Jim.
Listen, I'm shortening these games, man. We got to limit innings.
I hear you. You're going to be jealous of my Imanaga, though, because I'm not going to need a bullpen. You understand what I'm saying? I'm going to pick one more because I have to do one more, a fourth one. It's going to be an all-time favorite of mine who is probably having more of a death rattle than he is a resurgence, but I'm still going to take him just for this year. Christian Yelich. Again, the guy hits. He just hits. And this year he's decided I'm just going to be a hitter instead of trying to just hit home runs, and all of a sudden he's hitting. So I think Christian Yelich would be a nice addition to my lineup, and I think it would probably round out most of my issues with this baseball team. Except for catcher, I would still have my terrible tandem, Jim.
Yeah. Well, we can't
after
fix
William
I
couldn't think of any I wanted. I like Tyler Stevenson, and I thought about that, but he never plays catcher. They almost have him DH every day.
I blame David Bell for that.
Well, but how you have to be pretty serious about rest if you're intentionally playing Luke Maile over him.
Yes,
right.
They're too serious. They treat Luke Maile like he's 1B, and he's definitely not. They should not do that. And he had an okay year last season, and because he was okay, everybody thought, oh, hey, maybe there's a catcher controversy. And it's no, Stevenson had a down year. Luke Maile had a career year, and his career year, I think, was an 88 OPS plus. So, I don't think we should be going too crazy over Luke Maile, and David Bell treating him like he's catcher 1B. I don't get it. Tyler Stevenson is in the top 5 for barrel rate, and he's nah, we'll give him an off day. Didn't even give him a pinch hit. Stuart Fairchild standing on second base in the top of the 8th inning with 2 outs, and you got Luke Maile at the plate. Nah, Tyler, you keep chomping on that hot dog. Luke Maile's got this.
Now, see, that's the second game of the series where we were freaking out because Derek Shelton didn't pinch hit, in the 9th to try to give us a chance there. We had a couple lefties just sitting on the bench. And the thing is, they're lefties that 90% of the season people have said didn't belong in the major leagues. So I'm not sure why we were freaking out that they weren't getting an opportunity, but
it's funny how that works.
Yeah. Right. So let's read our teams off here. Let's see how they've improved. We'll go with Jeff first. He's added Cody Bellinger, Nico Horner, Brian Reynolds and Sonny Gray. Not a bad addition to your team. Now, what do you think that does to your team? Does that make them a World Series contender, or do you think that makes them wild card or division?
I definitely think it makes a division contender. World Series is a toss-up for me. It depends on what version of the Dodgers you get in the playoffs. If you get the COVID Dodgers or any other Dodgers. But I think that it definitely makes them a contender with Milwaukee because of short up the outfield. The starting rotation is full 1 through 5 because it feels like right now the Reds are good 1 through 4, and the 5th spot is either Carson Spires or a bullpen day, and we're hoping that Graham Ashcraft can get right and come back to the major leagues and be back to pitch efficient because he's really not been efficient so far this year. And that's kind of been the biggest weakness with him. But I mean, if you add Sonny Gray to this rotation, then Frankie Montas can be the box of chocolates that he's been so far this season, and you're not going to be hurt by it because you can just use Nick Martinez or Carson Spires to bridge the gap in the games that he's bad, as instead of making them the featured pitcher in that every 5th day. So I think that overall this shores up the team to where it should be, and the lineup will be much more consistent.
I love it. And I still love how much we ravaged the Cubs. So, Jim,
Yeah.
let's read yours off here. You added Devin Williams, Halsey, Lodolo, and William Contreras. So you've addressed catcher.
Yep.
You have added a couple new bullpen arms, which really helps. How do you feel about your team? What does it do? You added another starter, too, another big lefty.
Yeah, you know.
Who needs his innings controlled? Thank you very much.
The Bellinger thing hurt. I lost him in this draft, and I'm still hurting over that because he just is everything that I think offensively the Pirates need. I would put them somewhere in the. It's good enough for the division.
Best pitching staff probably in the National League if you add those guys.
Yeah.
I think LA is still close, and so is Philly. But
Philly.
Philly. That'd be tough.
So, all right, so I got Ian Happ, Imanaga, Candelario, and Yelich. So I fixed the outfield, I think. I probably haven't added any lefty power, which I really need. And I definitely didn't fix catcher. So I'm going with Methuselah behind the dish unless Henry Davis comes back in this concussion, knocks some sense into him. We'll see how that works.
So you added offense. It just is it exactly what we need? I don't think Pirate fans would complain. It's more offense. Yeah,
I think they'd hit more. We may not complain about the catcher as much if they're hitting more just in general. So you can handle just having defense back there. That said, none of them have really done that either. So maybe I'll just sneak in and hope that Jeff leaves the door cracked open so I can take Melee off of his plate and help myself out a little bit more. Yeah, it'll be a comp pick because you were alive for a World Series and I was drinking formula on a Navy beach last time mine won. So probably a good thing. We should do Call Your Shot, Jim, because we're already getting long in the tooth, and I have had a great time here, but we got to make sure we support our supporters, right?
Hook someone up too.
Absolutely. So Call Your Shot. As always, brought to you by our good friends at shopyins.com. Stop over there. See all the wonderful Yinsery stuff they have for sale. You can even get stuff with Jim and I on it, which is kind of funny. I mean, we like to look at that and laugh every once in a while. Sometimes Jim and I will wear it ourselves and laugh at ourselves. Our wives love laughing at us. It's great. But stop down at Shop Yins for real. Check out the stuff they have. Cool stuff. Really original ideas. Fun things to look at. Check it out. Our Call Your Shot participant this week is the Pirate Queen Banshee. She's asking about Paul Skeens. He's a phenom. She wants to know what a team can learn from having a phenom around. And is there any way that it can be a detriment to some of the other players, like trying to do things that he wants to do? It can do. I actually thought about this a little bit myself before she asked this question, oddly enough, because I heard Jared Jones saying he was going to mess around in the offseason and try to add that splinker to his repertoire. And part of me is like, don't screw yourself up, kid. Like, you don't need to try to be Paul Skeens. You don't need to do that. Let's not give anybody more tape on that pitch. It's okay. Like, so I think I get what she's trying to say. I don't know. I've heard like that really, really good players aren't always really good coaches. And I would think that kind of applies here, because how can you explain how you do something if it just comes naturally to you? You know, I don't know how you go like, yeah, I just throw this. Like, Paul Skeens is a guy that literally just picked up a baseball 6 years ago and decided to be a pitcher. You know, and here he is as a rookie dominating the sport. So I don't know how you are going to show anybody anything. Really, like,
Right.
What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, in the case of Skeens in particular, I would say that, like, he does seem to have that kind of ability to he has an aura about him where, like, I think pitchers want to watch him. Like, there was a pitcher on Twitter the other day about, really, it was like the rest of the pitching staff was standing there watching him warm up. Now, that's different, right? Like, so I think you just try to soak that stuff in. Whether it's how he's carrying himself, how he prepares, which is already getting tons of play about, his preparation and how he is a professional, and whether that's a young guy or an old guy, that older fella that it just makes you want to lift your game. Do I recommend sitting there and trying to look, some of the stuff Paul Skeens does, you don't have that in you. You can't you can't do some of this stuff. So I think it's very case by case, but I think with Skeens, there's much more of a, like, when he walks in the room, I think there's an attention that people want to feed off that. And I don't buy that, by the way, with a lot of dudes. I tend to think that that's overstated with 99 point whatever % of players. But I think Skeens is different in that regard. And I do think that those are the types of guys that have impact, whether it's picking up something actually with the baseball or not. So that's where I would leave it.
Jeff, this might be a little bit of an old reference for you, but I can think back to like the 90s Braves with Greg Maddux comes in, teaches Tommy Glavine how to cheat the outside edges of the strike zone, teaches John Smoltz how to calm down and, stay in the zone a little bit more and trust his stuff. And there was even Avery he had going for a while there. Like, he really had impact. He was a veteran. I don't know how a kid comes in and just by being him influences the room, but there's no denying the Pirates score runs when he plays most of the time. There's no denying that there's more energy in the stadium and in that dugout when he's on the mound. I don't know if anybody's learning pitches from him, but they're certainly absorbing his aura.
What was the stat? It's like a 45% uptick in ticket sales at PNC whenever he pitches at home. Like,
it's something like that, and it's probably worse now for this weekend. But
I definitely think it's a sort of reverse thing when it comes to Skeens. Like, I mean, Skeens knows what he knows, right? He's not a guy that's got to. I mean, he learns a little bit of MLB stuff from the veterans and stuff like that. Like, the Reds sort of have this experience from a negative standpoint, and especially if you ask certain people, the fact that Joey Votto isn't on this team. And there's a lot of people that think that because of Joey Votto not being on this team, that's why they're not hitting, because they don't have the voice in the locker room of their conscience or whatever. That's something that there was reports that Will Benson had really fallen back on Joey Votto's advice last year, and that was something that helped him. And there were other guys that gleaned good experiences out of talking with him. And I don't necessarily know that it's so much of like learning a specific pitch, because everybody wanted to say immediately, well, why can't Frankie Montas teach Hunter Green how to throw a splitter? And it's just like, because it doesn't work that way. Like, I mean, if that were the case, then every team that Randy Johnson was on would have been unhittable. So
Right.
I think that there's elements of the game that people can impart to other players, but it's not always a one for one you get this ability. In fact, the best example of that is the fact that Ellie De La Cruz spent the offseason with Juan Soto. And they were really learning, you know, he was teaching him a lot of different stuff, and Ellie was trying to learn how to approach an at bat just like Juan Soto does. And he's learned plate discipline to an extent because of Juan Soto. But I also have seen a couple of times, not very often and not very consistently, but you see it every so often, where Ellie will try to check his swing, and while he's checking his swing, he does the Soto shuffle. Or the Soto shuffle.
Shoto, we can call it Shoto shuffle.
Yeah. It's yeah, very confusing to say it, but say it 5 times fast. But the Soto shuffle, where like he like, you know, shuffles his feet and stuff.
Yeah.
And every time he's done that, he gets rung up on it. It's not helped him at all. So it's like, yeah, the abilities don't transfer 1-to-1 just because they spend time with a guy.
Yeah.
Right. I would say with a phenom, it's probably more difficult. I think some of those guys that, again, I fall back on that. Really good players probably don't make really good coaches. I still sometimes think about how weird it is that Don Mattingly is a coach, because, and I don't think he does a good job. To be honest, I don't think he did a good job with the Marlins. I don't think he's done a good job with the Blue Jays. I think you have a hard time understanding why other people can't just get it.
Yep.
You know, and I think like that's something that just killed most good managers. They tend to be like either they were borderline scrub players or they never made it to begin with, and they just started focusing on the mental aspect of the game. You know, because
Barry Bonds didn't last very long as a hitting coach. You know,
yeah.
I just like, you hear them, and sometimes I just don't think, like, it's asking, you know, Mario Lemieux to be a coach when you're just great. You're like, no matter how hard you've worked, you're still just great. And things you see things on a different level than other people do. So I just, yeah. And back to Queen's question, which was a really good question. I think pitchers all the time are talking, right? Like, these are grips I use. How do you do, like, what arm angle are you coming in? What kind of grip do you use? And yeah, they screw around with that stuff. How often does it translate? I don't know, but Paul Skeens, I just watch him. I look how other people look at him that are professionals, and that's different. So that's what makes me, you know,
I don't know how you can ask anybody to absorb his ability, and here's why. He taught himself that splinker in an afternoon and introduced it in a game that evening. Like, in AAA. So not like, you know, long time ago, something he's been messing around with.
Right.
He saw somebody throwing something. He threw something. It did something weird. He was like, oh, wow, that's neat. Started using it that night. The catcher had no idea he was even going to throw it. Didn't know what it was.
Yeah, some guys they're just different. Yeah,
it's crazy. Anyways, Jeff, this was great, man. Thank you for taking so much time.
Yeah, dude.
Good check in with you. The NL Central is going to be a fun ride this whole year if people will let it be. For real. That's what I would tell my fan base. I hope you would too.
It was the biggest evidence a couple of weeks ago, whenever the Reds went 7 in a row after losing 17 of 22, and everybody was just like, oh, this team's done. And then they won 7 in a row and they were in second place, and everybody's like, and they were in a wild card spot, and everybody's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, that's how crazy this season, and it's going to continue to be this way all year long. I don't know that any one team in the National League wild card race, much less the National League Central division race, is just going to fall off and be completely non-competitive. I think everybody's going to have slumps, but it's not going to be to the point where you're just like, oh, well, they're joining the Rockies and the Marlins where we don't have to worry about them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting here. I think there's 2 teams in the National League that you could firmly say aren't in it. And you're kind of waiting to find out how many people are going to bring things to the swap meet. It's I I know people want deals to be made right now, but like there's
It's too early.
4 or 5 teams in the entire league that are ready to sell.
Yeah.
And I'm
And they
not
know
even
they can sit on their trades and wait for the best offer. So
the
they're
thing
not gonna
is,
do it
Jeff,
quick.
I'm not 100% convinced some of the sellers are really, really, really sellers. Like the White Sox, there's no reason for them to move Robert. They have them signed up for years. They've got a bunch of young kids coming. You should never want to do that unless they think there's something wrong with them, which I think they do, which is why I would never pay what they want to pay for him. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And the Mariners are really good. But, I mean, the Angels, what are they going to do? Are they going to sell off a broken Trout?
Right.
That's all. I mean, that's all they got.
That's their best chip. Yeah. Like Taylor Ward is all right. He's not like a guy that's going to fix what ails your team if you acquire him, but
Yeah,
he might be their
he's a slight
second best
upgrade.
trade chip. Yeah.
Slight upgrade. So, like, I'm not 100% sure there's a whole lot. The A's really should be focusing on coming out of this. So, especially ramping up into going to Las Vegas, they want to be rolling when they get there. That means their build's over, folks. That means they're now waiting on their prospects to come up. They're not trading Mason Miller. Like, I know Jeff talked about trading Rooker. Well, that makes sense. He's almost done there. So, like,
Right.
they have a few guys they can move, but not a lot.
Right.
And that's why this stretch before the trade deadline is so important, because if you can put together a little bit of a good run to make your front office try to be a little more serious about it, right? Like you have to do that as a team, because if you don't convince them, then I think the feelers that are put out are far less sexy and interesting, right? Because you haven't convinced your own front office to do enough. And in Pittsburgh, that's doubly important. So, hey, at least the Reds have spent some money here and there. It may never have been in the right situation or didn't work out, but so this is an important stretch for all these teams all huddled up in the middle here.
It really is. And I hate to admit it, but damn it, Manfred got what he wanted. This league without a salary cap, the talent is spread out top to bottom right now in a crazy, crazy way. It's as tight as it's ever been. You have your super teams, but I wouldn't want to be any of those super teams facing the Pirates rotation in the playoffs, or the Reds for that matter, potentially. Yeah. So, I mean, like, it really could be anybody's game if they get in. And it's pretty exciting time to be a fan of a team like this. I would say if you're going to give up now, why did you come back? You should have gave up 5 years ago, and I would have woke you up when they get there. That's all I'm saying. Like, now's not the time. Enjoy it. This is going to be fun. This is what it's all about, competitive baseball, and it looks like we're primed to have it the rest of the season. Welcome back, my rival friend, Jeff Carr. Super good stuff. Check out all of the shows on Locked On Network. They do a great job covering these teams individually, and it's good daily content, good stuff. Listen to it. You'll learn about these teams. You'll actually understand what's going on in the league, and it's pretty sweet. That's all I got.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hey,
awesome.
No, Jeff, thanks for thanks for jumping on. And I think it's enlightening for teams or fans to hear people from other teams that cover them, because sometimes you realize, you know what, things aren't as unique to you as you thought they were. So, yeah. So
let's pass it off to Ben. Bud. Ben's the smartest person in the room. Let's pass it off to him.
Let's go, Bucks!
Yeah, buddy. All right, see you later.